I knew you were probably one of the best people to talk about it. And I just felt like I had to get a take out there. Let's talk about the young lady therapist situation. So for those who don't know, I don't know the young lady's name. She went live or did a TikTok. And if I'm not mistaken, in this TikTok was like called, using, I'll say, divester buzzwords, dusty, raggedy niggas, you know what I'm saying, etc. But the end goal was somehow to get black men to engage better with therapy. Now, that's a noble goal. I will completely wholeheartedly agree with. And I also understand the perspective of using harsh language to engage with a community that responds well to that, right? I am wholly against that being a product of content, personally. Like I might get behind the scenes and talk to a young brother, not at all how I talk on this platform. On this platform, I am in educator mode. Like I can get fired for saying the wrong thing. But I might pull out a nigga get your shit together ethos to talk to a brother personally. But what it was stigmatized at the end of the day. And of course, she then got fired. So first talk about like because I think we've engaged on Twitter around the failures of people to understand that therapy isn't some type of like silver bullet for black men. And that it has to be adequate and well designed for us. And then also just like the realities of what she did wrong.
Yeah. So I'll start with a story about myself first. So my last insurance provider, I have signed up for therapy. So I'm like, let me re-up. It's time to just kind of talk through some things and make sure I'm in a good space. I was on a waiting list for 6 months. By the time I got the therapy, found a therapist, wasn't black, and the copay was $90. So I'm up out of there. You know what I'm saying? And typically, my approach is, because I know how hard it is to get a therapist, more often than not, I'm going to sit on the first therapist that I get, unless they just egregiously bad and on some bullshit. I'm like, look, this is what I got, because I'm going to be waiting another 3-4 months. So I'm going to filter enough of what I'm dealing with so I can get myself service in this environment. This is from somebody who has a master's in counseling, has been a therapist before, knows how to navigate the insurance system to get my needs met, and I could not afford it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In Massachusetts, which is one of the best social service provider states that there is as regards to mental health. So this is here. I'm in the
this is the best case scenario.
It's the best case scenario.
You are educated.
Yes.
You are college educated in a blue state with good social services. Who is also we'll say prime for advocacy, meaning that you know how to advocate yourself in the system.
Also have my own organization that advocates for men to get, support. Therapeutic services is one of those things, but building support models outside of it, because I know it just doesn't exist. And this isn't my experience.
Right.
So when people, Twitter is big for superlatives and grand proclamations around what you're supposed to do to be able to solve a problem. So if I can get therapy, it doesn't make sense to just say, just go to therapy. Like, there's not enough therapists, there's not enough psychiatrists, not enough social workers, which is why, plug from my organization, the Men Foundation, and other organizations doing things like it, we create support spaces outside of that. That's why I really like things like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, NA, because people can form and create that in their own way. Now that you can argue the philosophy, all of that, but the people who are experiencing it become the access points for support.
Yeah. And social support, just to co-sign, like I'm formerly a health researcher. Social support is a huge element of improving pretty much every area of health outcomes improves with social support.
Yes.
Especially in absence of quality. What's the word that they use? Proven. What's the phrase? Scientifically validated. I don't know. Whatever. You get the point though. Quality assured is essentially the same gist.
Right. So you have all of that, and then here's what it is. And also want to say that a lot of things can be therapeutic without being therapeutic. saying, and let me just say this for anybody who might be listening, if you decide to go into social services or want to be a therapy provider, you cannot be an influencer and do this at the same time. You cannot do that
Yeah.
because of how the sort of content that social media yearns for, the things that will get people buzzing. You gonna walk yourself out of a practice like she did.
Peer review. Thank you, the pyro tyrant. I was trying to remember
Or
the phrase. Go
shout out to
ahead.
the people that's watching, but like that sort of thing you can't say. So you can't have this non-therapeutic approach to we're talking about people who are navigating therapy and stigma related to being vulnerable enough and finding a safe space to be able to share their needs and concerns.
Yeah.
You watch the video, there's clearly other things going on with her. And that's just not the place to do that. It's not the place to do that. So there's a lot of ethical codes that comes with providing therapeutic services and being in practice by way of mental health providers, the counseling associations, and social work.
Mm-hmm.
That list, you can't do this type of stuff. Like you
Right.
can't be unprofessional. You can't talk about your clients a particular sort of way. You can't share personal information. You can violating HIPAA. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So much of her content kind of either crossed the line or straddled the line with that it's not worth the risk of liability of a social service provider to have her on staff because a client who might feel a way about them will file a lawsuit against them.
Right.
And in order to practice, some places make you have your own insurance. And some of the institutions themselves have insurance, but it's to prevent things like this.
Yeah.
For people to say, I've been harmed by something that my therapist is doing.
And
So typically it's some stuff like sexual assault or something in that realm, but I wouldn't have, if I had my own clinic or service, I wouldn't have wanted to take that risk either.
right. And I want to be clear because I didn't put this out there in the lead up. The harassment that she got is inappropriate, and this is not an endorsement of any type of harassment from anybody, black, white, otherwise, especially black women on the internet. And that's kind of why I take the stance I tend to take around these things, is because the immediate vulnerability of black women online is so heightened that, like, if there's a thing that I would want to comment on and be critical of, but it's really hot, I'm like, I'm gonna just let that simmer. My voice isn't necessary in that discourse, because crazy shit happens. But then also I'm seeing her later videos. It looks like she's herself having a bit of a breakdown, and that's like scary when you consider the population she has to serve, right? It's not just serving black men in particular, but serving people who literally need state support to access mental health care, and that's kind of the thing that, like, so I mentioned having because I think, like, when I finally heard her video, I was like, because first I was like, I literally refused to watch the video. I had seen I saw the Twitter discussion. I was like, nope. Yeah. I'm not even going to engage. I already know what this is. She said something that inflamed enough people, and now everybody with an agenda is using her as a wedge opportunity to voice their discontent against insert group here that they don't like, right? Even though the middle take is probably the best take, but nuance isn't for Twitter. But when I heard it, I was like, yeah, this is like, there was a study, I might have came across it from you, or not a study. There was some piece of data that somebody talked about how black boys are starting to be affected by the rhetoric that surrounds them in social media. And then when I combine that, because let's keep it a buck. I hope people aren't making a mistake. It's a lot of niggas wilding on the internet. A lot of brothers is wilding on the internet. Always. Yeah. And like, I think that hegemonic drive part gives a lot of explanation to that, because I've only known in my personal life, I don't know dudes like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't hang with those dudes. I know of those dudes, and I don't rock with them in real life because of how they act. But on the internet, they have capital. They have social capital that they may not have in real life. And then that breeds, that breeds an attraction to like that reinforces that behavior, reifies it. It makes it more predictable to happen. And so when you have that happen, and his sisters too, this young lady in particular is probably an example of that, that their toxic behavior in community around other black people is unacceptable. So their silence, but in social media is amplified. And then that feedback loop creates, I think, dissonance in us.
Right.
Where it's like, I don't even know what to believe. Do I believe, is it the community that I've always known and been engaged with and raised around? Is that real? Or is it literally millions of people, at least hundreds of thousands of people, calling me a dusty or calling black women bed wenches? You know what I'm saying? Or is that who we really are? And then when I think about a generation, when I think about the variety of the diaspora, at least just in America, where some folks haven't had the community that I've had, right? What's more real to them? They don't even have what I've experienced to counteract that. And that really stuck with me in terms of like, what isms and biases have I developed that I wasn't even aware of because of that,
See, I'm gonna pull it back a little bit to my journey through activism and seeing some of this stuff and seeing how digital views and content and perspectives on Black community begin to overlay how everybody views us. But I'm like, hey, I don't know if I see this in real places. So back when I was organizing, I did the Black Lives Matter stuff for a little while.
Right.
I was really trying to figure out what the balance was between women who have all of these feelings, Black women specifically, that they haven't had the space to speak about, or for a variety of reasons, how the most negative interpretations of their experiences are the things that bubble to the top.
Right.
That's what the media consumes, that's what the media is looking for. There's a lot of content creators, activists, celebrity activists that took advantage of that and have this duality in their position where they're advocates for Black women, but they're also using caricatures of Black men to like hold their position by saying we're the best of them. We're the better part of Black people. Those over there, the niggas, they not us sort of thing. So I think I was really struggling with trying to find the real, what's the reality? What's my duty as a Black man to make space for the women in my community who may not have these views that are more extreme and less nuanced, but are affected by these things that are happening. And throughout the sort of the organizing and activism that I ended up doing, starting my own, initiatives through B-Men Foundation or working with other men to do communal sexual assault, or even the way I talk to my girlfriend, the questions I ask. I'm like, I have a lot of frustration with the harm that comes from white supremacy choosing the narratives that give them the position that kind of puts them off the hook. Right. But I'm like, I also see people having a voice for things that they've been trying to figure out how to address and they're not quite sure. So if there's any part of me that has grace for the woman, therapist woman, is the part that is looking to find a community around the frustrations that she had. And if she has spoken outside of her therapeutic position or expertise, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
But because she tried to use the professional, her degrees or her places that she worked to give credence to that position or the place that she was in, that's where the problem became. And that's been my interest in finding balance and having really a real conversation with the Black women in my life around, okay, what is this like for you? Here's how I struggle, but I want you to feel seen in how all of this stuff is happening.
Yeah. For me, it's also just the fact that it was content. Especially as I'm doing this full time and I'm doing it pretty well. And I feel like my experience is unique, but also like the way I've approached it is unique, which I think is why I'm in a unique position. Cause it's not like I said this in the video. It's hard to talk about Blackness the way I do and get an audience as big as I've got. And my audience still ain't that big. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to do that. And when I, and so then when I think about what it takes for me to like maintain this and like the power of content, the power of us on screen, we just two regular dudes, right? Couple of advanced degrees. Like I ain't done nothing special. You know, Shay, I'm sure you ain't changed, you know, you changed the community, but you ain't changing the world. You ain't won no elected office, etc. But on screen, suddenly we're transformed into thought leaders.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We are literally now creating culture. And so I think there's a great responsibility, especially in the face of that hegemonic drive, to say, what kind of culture are you creating with your platform?
Right.
And you have to be careful about stuff. You have to be careful about how you might be co-opted and how your content is, there's going to be a thirst for you to do that. There's a thirst for that because
not just now. So even before when I even started doing a lot of the more public activism stuff, I knew that anything I put on the internet, 2015, whether it's 2035, 2022, if someone wants to build a image of me that serves a particular purpose, they can cherry pick and do this. So we as, like you said, culture creators or cultivators, we have to be so thoughtful about, all right, what even I made there things that come out that I'm like, oh, I feel this way or I think this is funny, but I'm not going to put that out there because it's going to send a particular sort of message that in person we don't have to worry about. We can clear up whatever, any confusion or lack of nuance because you're just like, oh yeah, I felt this way or whatever. Or they can read your body language and know where you land, where you don't land.
Right. So much nuance is pulled out of this, especially on Twitter. Like Twitter, there's no nuance at all. It's how do my biases read what I see? The classic thing is I like pancakes and somebody responds, oh, so you hate waffles. And it's like, I don't even know how to respond.
And they get 100,000 likes.
Right. They get 100,000 likes. And then you have a narrative. There's a narrative. They go, that waffle hating ass nigga over there. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, it's hard.